Hey everyone, Flying Scotsman here and welcome to this video. Now, recently I decided to switch on this machine, the Flying Scotsmachine, because I wanted to play a game. And I had a new mouse which I wanted to test out with the Retro Computer Corner. Unfortunately, however, I had a couple of issues with that. This machine, now I can't remember whether I filmed this last year or not, but this machine actually had an issue when I tried installing. I don't know if I did this on video, but last summer I tried to make a dual boot between Windows 98 and Windows 2000, and I was just having problem after problem with this machine. Now, more recently, when I came to switch this machine on, I realised that the bottom optical drive had completely let go, and it was actually stopping the system from booting. So I thought I would, before playing some games on it last night, I'd actually bought an optical drive to replace it with. Decided to finally get around to replacing the optical drive in this system, and yeah, just actually, getting it out and just playing some games on it. So that said, I set about changing the optical drive, and then I noticed something on the main board. Yeah, that is an unmistakably a bulging capacitor. Now, I know that a hell of a lot of people are going to be expecting me to be able to just kind of whip this motherboard out, get out a soldering iron and replace the offending capacitor and then see how it goes. Unfortunately, that is sadly not going to be the case, because of my visual impairment and my lack of motor skills, due to the AS, I am really unable to solder. I did do some soldering in school as part of systems and control, but with that I actually had a magnifying glass. No, I didn't. I had a CCTV magnifier. Now those are not cheap. They're thousands upon thousands of pounds to buy, and so soldering is completely out of the question. So it looks like it's going to be a replacement board then. What I probably will do is try and free cycle this board off. Now, if anybody can solder a new capacitor onto it, perfect. If we can get it going, even better. I mean, the board still works, but it's extremely unstable. It took a few attempts to get Windows 98 to start up, and on the Windows 2000 side of things, it crashed while playing Canyon.mid. Yeah. So I have a different motherboard. I can show to you now, and it is this one. Now, a cursory glance over the board shows me that there are no bulging capacitors. So hopefully it should be fine. It's the same kind of chipset, VT8694T, and again it takes a 12-in Pentium 3, has 3 memory slots capable of taking up to 1.5 GB of RAM. It has an AMR slot, audio modem writer, AGP 4x slot, and 5 PCI slots, one of which is shared with an ISA slot. Nice. What we don't have is USB headers, so the USB ports are now going to be disabled on the front of this case. Bit of a shame. And yeah, has a lot of jumpers, does this board. It seems that it likes, well, jumpers and dip switches. It seems it likes things to be set via jumpers and dip switches. And if I wanted to upgrade the BIOS on this board, there's jumpers that apparently I've got to set to do that, which I can see why they did it in terms of safety, but at the same time it does make things extremely inconvenient if I wanted to go and upgrade the BIOS on this main board. And it seems that there are some BIOSes that have fixed a few issues on this machine, on this board. But there you go, I have a board. Now on the back of this board we have no audio at all. This literally is designed so that you bring your own cards with you. So no onboard audio, no onboard video. You just get PS2 keyboard and mouse, 2 USB ports, LPT printer port, and 2 serial LPT parallel printer port, and 2 RS-232 serials. That's your lot. But I mean, if this board is simple, hopefully it'll work, and that'll be nice. Now it's funny because I did buy this board because I've always been a wee bit wary of the Jetway board. What kind of board is this, you might ask, that I've picked up? Well, it's a Gigabyte 6VTXE socket 370 processor motherboard. So, before we actually get on to the new board, what I am going to have to do is take this machine apart. Now, with the case being a toolless design, the only tool, well, nearly toolless, a couple of tools needed. One to actually, you know, work on it, and the other to, you know, unscrew the motherboard. With this case being nearly a toolless design, it should be quite easy to at least weak out the PCI cards. Not going to be removing any of the drives, although I will put the cables to one side. So, first off, what I want to do is lift up and put away this this card holder thingy. Right, there you go. There you go. I'm just going to take out the Audio Vortex 2 sound card. Good chance to recap on the specs actually. This Texas Instruments IEEE 1394 Firewire port card, which is actually this card. Very tight PCI slots. And this table is very, very rickety. There we go. IEEE 1394. I just kind of had that card lying about, so I put it in, because why not? Meant to be a top end system of the time, so would have maybe had Firewire. At the heart of this system is a Trioliton CPU. Intel, there we go. Here's a an Ethernet card. I forget what mic it is. I'm sure it's a 3-con, but I could be badly mistaken. No, it looks like a... I don't know what this is. I forget what this is. I do believe Windows 98 has the drivers for it. But there you go. And last but not least, the video card. So I'm going to need to try and work out how you... oh yeah, that's right. Quite easy. Wow, that was the easiest one to eject, was the AGP one. And this card is an NVIDIA GeForce Ti 200. And there's going to be some people asking, why didn't I buy the 500? Well, that's because they're incredibly rare. And yeah, I buyed, unfortunately, within the UK where things, well, it seems to be acceptable to gouge the hell out of people wanting to buy computers. That is a major bone of contention for me. Doesn't matter what age you're buying into, computers will be a lot more expensive over here than they would in the States. And given that the UK is becoming a low-wage economy, it makes me even less happy. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to clear all these wires out the road. One, two, three. And now we've got to do the screw. Yeah. I know some people are probably going to isolate that last sentence and stick on inappropriate at the end of it. Right. Excellent. And as usual, there's a mishmash of screws holding this board in. The fact that the split screw isn't actually coming out is that does seem like a problem to me, because it seems that what will have happened is it will be a way to take the stand off with it. And as I don't have any pliers here, which is a shame. There we go. Right. There we go. Right, so as I thought, with this errant screw, it's taking the standoff with the board. I have another standoff though, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Right. So we have the board, and everything on it. Now I'm just going to put this tower to one side. Temporarily. Because what we need to do now is we need to remove the processor and the memory and the cooler. Memory is easy to remove. These locking tabs will just weak it out. Cooler is a lot more complicated, but still press it down. Where did my screwdriver box go? Oh, there it is. What you can do is you can use a flat head and gently pry it away. Sorry, I know my head's in the road, but like I said, you know, vision being what it is. There we go. And then we've just got to try and remove the catch from the other side. Where is the, there we go, we've unplugged the CPU cooler, and that's good. The thermal compound has dried on it and has pulled the CPU out of the socket. That's exactly what I was after. Right. So I want to be careful now, because obviously it has the, oh, bloody hell, the CPU has been pulled out of the socket, but the cooler is still not coming away. Right. What I'm going to have to do is just see if I can gently pry the CPU up off of the socket. There we go. There we go. And now I can be a bit more forceful with the cooler. There you go. You've got 1.26 gigahertz Intel Pentium 3. And now that that's away, everything is fine. Good. And there is the old board. And what I'm going to do is help myself to its battery, because why not? And there is a Belgian cap. Yuck. Now, before we do anything, we'll need to clean off the old thermal compound. To do this, I just use these wet wipes from Aldi. You can get actual thermal compound removal solution, but I find that this stuff usually works quite as well. So I just need to remove, whoopsie, also need to be wary of not catching the pins on the other side. And there we go, we have a shiny new CPU. Look at that. That is beautiful. And the pens seem to be okay as well, that's good. Right, I will, what I will do is I'll just quickly clean off the around the CPU's heat spreader, because there's some thermal gunk there that could, or at least some kind of gunge that could use a wee bit of a cleaning. And for any beginners among you that might be watching this, it's always, in fact, it's essential, it's required, you must, if ever you're taking a CPU and cooler apart, even if you're going to be replacing them, like putting the cooler back on the CPU like I am with this build, you should always clean off the old thermal paste and put fresh on, because if not, you'll end up with air bubbles. Well, you end up with spaces. You won't get an even spread of thermal compound between your CPU's heat spreader and your heatsink, and that means the CPU could be in places not actually mated to the heatsink properly, and can cause it to overheat. And especially with some of these older ones, you don't necessarily have thermal throttling controls. This motherboard that is very gungy, by the way. Don't know how it became so gungy. I've never had anything that messy. Not in anything that I've really built, which is yeah. Yeah, that was very messy. But yeah, you always want to have you know, new thermal compound. Now this board that I am fitting does have thermal cutout as far as I know, but I mean, that's on the board itself. Modern CPUs, they will shut off and shut your computer down immediately. So it's always a good idea to dry off your CPU and heatsink before you put them back in a system. Just use a paper towel to do this. You should be fine. It's nice and dry. Same with the heatsink. There we go. So, I guess it's now time to get the new motherboard out and start fitting stuff to it. So, in order to install the CPU, I'll just kind of do it in the box. On a socket 370 socket, we have, well, most CPU sockets, in fact, we have a wee arm that comes up, which opens up the socket. And what you need to do, you need to drop the CPU in. Now, there's a wee triangle of missing pins on one of the corners, and that's marked out on this processor with a wee gold triangle. So what you want to do is just, you want to try and drop that in. Now, force should not necessarily be needed for this. So just kind of mind, I guess, how you go. Actually, there's 2 triangles on here, so it's yeah, like I said, force shouldn't be needed. So if you're struggling to put it into the socket, you're probably not doing it right, although this seems to be an issue as well. Now, the CPU was pulled out unceremoniously of the old board. So that could, some of the pins might have become a wee bit bent. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happened. Yep, some of the pins are slightly bent because of how they came out of that other CPU socket. That's not what you want. Well, bad news, guys. I could not straighten out the legs on my Charlatan processor, and while I did have a spare one, I seem to have misplaced it. I've misplaced a hell of a lot of things since I redecorated. And I do believe I have some at my office, so I'll have to see if I can go and look them out. But for now, here's the old 933 megahertz Coppermine CPU that I had used in the original build of the Flying Scotsmachine. Now, there we go. That's the CPU installed. I thought I had a lead as to where the processor was, but I really don't. Honestly, this video has been really more about how my vision and AS has really kind of limits me more than it has about building a computer. But let's... Now it's time to install the heatsink. So again, I want to try and hook onto one side and then the, There we go, I think. And I can use a flathead blade to hook I've got to be really, really careful, otherwise I'll put the screw through the board. It's There we go. So that's the heatsink on. Now we need to have a look at some of these jumpers. Now this set well, switches. This set of switches here is set to auto. This set, however, has not been set to anything, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto my tablet, refer to the instruction manual. So I've reset the switches for a 933 MHz processor with a 133 MHz worth of front side bus. And yes, I know this is an AMD cooler, but the Socket A coolers will fit the Socket 370 boards, and being as it's quite a beefy cooler, it should offer some nice cooling. Now, at some point I would like to find I think I have some 1.4s at work, so I would quite like to get those installed. And next thing I need to do is to install the RAM. There we go. And now it's time to put the motherboard into the case. In order to do that, it would be a good idea to move all the cables and everything out of the road. So that I can do just that. Now, before I replace the before I go about replacing the standoff, I want to offer the board up to the case, just to see what the situation is. Right. Yeah. So I literally just want to put a standoff in here. Not sure if at this point I'll put a screw in there, but it's a good idea to have the standoff anyway, just for the stability of the motherboard. And I'm kind of glad the sun's came out, because it'll give me a wee bit of light to work with. This tripod doesn't really go high enough. I have a golden standoff. That, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to have to not put a screw in there, but use it purely for stability. again, back in with the motherboard. And then it's just a case of screwing it back in. Okay, so I've put things back together. I've done all the power connections up as far as I can tell. I've sorted out the LEDs. The front panel connectors, apart from the USB, which is now going to have to remain disarmed. And I've even installed a fan with blue LEDs, but yeah. So, it's time now to start installing expansion cards, and then we'll be ready for the first powered on self-test. So, first things first, plonk a graphics card into here. Wait, no, first things first, let's open the expansion, let's open up the expansion sockets. This board, unlike the Jetway one, does not have a clip for the AGP card. Next, I need to install the firewire. James. There we go. Ethernet. And finally, the sound card. And now I just need to, oh, there we go, shut the PCI door. There we go. And the next thing I want to do is grab the CD audio cable and plop it in. And the next thing now is to connect up the drives. Now I do believe IDE 1 and 2 are, well, I'll do IDE 2 first, and that would be for the CD-ROMs. Funny that, some boards label it as 0 and 1 and some do it as 1 and 2. 0 and 1. There we go. I've got this drive connected to this. There we go. Then the hard drive connector is plugged in. And then finally, I need to plug in the floppy disk drive. And there we go. Machine is all nice and put back together. So I believe we're ready for a smoke test. Okay, moment of truth time. Well, the power's not connected. Powered light isn't connected. Try slave drive. It's happy. Incompatible. I mean, the machine works. Just not really getting any lights out of it. And the floppy disk drive doesn't seem to want to work. Well, I kept copies of the drivers on the hard drive though. I'm starting to wonder if I remembered to plug in the floppy drive. Well, I managed to get the computer going again. Just needed to, I forgot to plug the other drive in, and I forgot to plug the floppy drive in, and the hard drive LED was plugged in back the way. So, soon sorted out those wee foibles, went into the CMOS and have reset it, and now it's time to button the system back up and reintroduce it into the retro computer corner, and then it will be ready to play them night games. It's strictly for the cools to play the night games. So I'm just going to connect this back up, and then we'll do another power on test. Okay, so let's power on. First of all, let's have a look in the BIOS. If I can. Wait a minute. That's not good. Right. We're in and we have keyboard and hopefully mouse functionality restored. Let's remember the date and the time. Quite amazing, since I did swap out the CMOS battery. It's got the hard drive. Floppy disk has been reconnected, and I have tested it off camera. Let's set the boot order. ID boot delay, no. Boot up and unlock on. Floppy drive seek, yeah, I'd quite like that. Chipset features, top performance. AGP mode 4 times, yep. Power management, suspend, soft off by power button. AC back function, soft off. Modem use IRQ for plug and play Aware OS. Yes, it is. Reset configuration data. VGA boot from AGP. Integrated peripherals, enhanced tappy performance, I'm getting enabled. Onboard ID, both. Onboard floppy disk controller, auto. Onboard parallel port, yep. Onboard a NC97 modem, auto. Yep. Hardware monitor and MISC setups. Current CPU temperature 35 degrees. Yep, that seems to be all. Everything seems to be in order. Now, I'm just going to go into Windows 98 just now. What's this saying? Emulation disabled in Windows. You probably need reinstalled. That's fine, it'll get it. So this is quite noisy, but it's not offensively noisy. It's fine. I mean, it is using an AMD cooler, so yeah. And that was the sound of a zip drive. Oh sugar, did I even bother to connect the Ethernet? Yes, I'm certain I did, but... So everything has just been reinstalled. Oh, game port interface. Well, I need to get these drivers installed, otherwise this card will become an obscurial Vortex 2. And I know that joke doesn't get much credence. I'm just going to go and check while this is failing to shut down. I'm just going to go check that the Ethernet is connected. Yeah, the Ethernet is connected. So, what gives? Yep, there we go. The Oriole Vortex 2 driver is now enabled. That's more encouraging. And an unknown USB device. That's not helpful. Okay, so everything is working apart from the zip drive, which I think could probably be faulty anyway. Just not getting any joy from it at all. Oh, well, the unknown device bit, he's gone. Well, that is odd. Oh well. But the system, I do believe, is in working condition once again. Just a shame I've had to go back from 1.2 to 933 megahertz. Not something that I necessarily wanted to do, but well, I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. Pen's got kind of mangled when I tried to take the CPU off of the board, off of the old board. But hopefully everything is all working now. So, with that said, I think I'm going to end this video here. Obviously, I think what I will do, just to be on the safe side, is give this a reinstall of Windows 98 and maybe even Windows 2000. I'll see what I feel. And yeah. But until then, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video, and please join me for my next one. Cutie bye.